What's good, my brother? From another mother?
Radio Friendsmith episode 413, talking about how industrial black metal and its consequences have been a disaster. Actually, it hasn't really been that bad. It's given us a solid handful of very inventive and interesting black metal releases, such as the discography of Godkiller, whom I covered about 4 years ago on episode 184, and of course, Thorns, who I covered on episode 43 almost 7 years ago. I'm dying. And it is sort of a stylistic crossover that actually makes a lot of sense if you really think about it. If you remember, I covered the very beginnings of electronic music with Kraftwerk in a 3-part series around this time last year. Well, when that band first came out,
where have you been? We are the robots.
a lot of the press, who weren't so into them at the time, stuck them with the label the German air conditioner on account of the fact that electronic music sounded so cold to the unexperienced listening population at the time. And what, I ask you, is colder than a properly done Scandinavian, specifically Norwegian, black metal riff? I'm talking about the kind where you're not just strumming a bar chord, you're kind of going through picking out individual notes. Maybe you hit the bottom 3 with a downstroke and then the top 3 in reverse with an upstroke while you're sliding down the neck or something weird like that. One of these kind of riffs. If you've ever written or played a riff like that, or even just listened to a whole bunch of riffs that sound like that sort of thing, you'd probably agree with me that it just has this inherent iciness to it. So it follows that these same sorts of riffs could work well in an industrial context, as well as a black metal one. And indeed, the composer of that particular riff, Snorre from Thorns, actually repurposed it in a more industrial sort of black metal song many years later. Still the same riff, he just plays it even more mechanistically and adds all kinds of bleepy bloopy noises and samples and whatnot to the background. Boom, industrial black metal. When done properly, it's a pretty interesting stylistic matchup. And so I figured we could talk about a couple bands doing that sort of thing, since there's a lot of stylistic overlap between that and a lot of the post black metal stuff I was talking about last week. So here we go, industrial black metal, and please note I am talking specifically about black metal of the Norwegian variety here, alright? So if you see any bozos in the comments,
I just stopped in to make sure that he mentioned Aberim. Why aren't you talking about Blut Nord?
You just tell that fella to have a very Merry Christmas.
He's gay!
Yeah.
First up, from Akershus, we have Mysticum, who are perhaps somewhat well known to certain post-black metal fans for doing a split with Ulver way back in 1994, which is kind of ironic because I can't really think of any two bands out there that are more dissimilar in tone than early Ulver and Mysticum. Mysticum's 1996 album In the Streams of Inferno is perhaps one of the darkest and most evil sounding albums to ever come out of a genre whose mission statement from the beginning was to be dark and evil. Like, you got regular music, then you got black metal as the dark and evil counterpart to that. Mysticum is like the black metal to black metal, if that makes any sense. This shit is fucking vicious, and it absolutely takes advantage of that cold, sterile, synthetic atmosphere to enhance their overall malevolent aura. Apparently, these guys started out as a much more normal black metal band with real drums and such. In fact, they planned to have Frost on drums, and the drum machine ended up just kind of happening as a matter of convenience, and then they just leaned into it really hard and made it a core part of their sound, and I'm so glad that they did, because it colors the music in a very unique way, and that overall sterile, cold, soulless feeling allows them to bust out some of the most evil riffs of all time. Like this one. The drum machine and the synthetic sound doesn't take away from the music at all. It adds to it. It's a core part of what makes this sort of warped musical world exists so effectively. And yet, despite being industrial black metal, it's still 100% pure black metal. You hearing those fucking keyboards, brother? That's some true Norwegian shit right there. And the vocals are fantastic. They sound almost exactly like Ishans on In the Night Side Eclipse. But the really cool thing about this album has to be the song arrangements. The sense of compositional dynamics, making miniature symphonies out of one or two chords.
You know what she did? Your catching daughter.
And as you would expect for an industrial band, they're also very good at utilizing samples and little remixing tricks to put forward this very, very dark atmosphere. You know, that sort of like remix culture almost comes through in the way the songs themselves are written, because a lot of tracks in this album almost feel like an intentional deconstruction of certain fundamental aspects of black metal's various substyles. For instance, not only is there sort of a cutting up and repasting of tropes from Emperor and Thorns, but there's even a bit of Marduk going on at certain points, albeit in a very self-consciously Mysticum sounding way. Like, that sounds like some straight up Legion era Marduk shit, complete with B-War's bass sound, but it's given an entirely new feeling due to their utilization of the drum machine and the much more mechanistic, cold, sterile guitar sound. On the last Terminus podcast live stream, they talked a little bit about which bands they thought utilized the drum machine most effectively, and the standard names came up: Catasexual Urge Motivation, Godflesh. I would argue Mysticum are right up there because they get all of the different sonic dynamics and textures you can get out of a drum machine. It's not just blast beats. There's also plenty of atmospheric stuff, like what you're hearing right now. Real deep, sonorous, percussive shit. They'll even change up synth patches and sound fonts on the drum machine to better suit individual riffs. It's very detail-oriented music. Like, it almost kind of feels like it was written by some kind of satanic supercomputer, which absolutely is what they were going for. We're heading into another really cool keyboard part right here, and I do mean cool as in fucking cold. Freezing. And because of that whole industrial thing they've got going on, it almost feels like they're layering the song as they write it, like they're DJing in addition to playing black metal. Perfect marriage of the two genres towards a most malevolent end. So In the Streams of Inferno was great. Going forward, their output was rather sparse. The main follow-up was in 2003. They did a split with the thrash metal band Audio Pain, featuring a song entitled Black Magic Mushrooms. That's usually included as a bonus track on every version you can get of In the Streams of Inferno nowadays, for a good reason, because it's a sick fucking song. And I gotta think that song title is sort of a goof on the more hippy-dippy aspects of electronic music. These guys aren't here to chill out or party. They're here to kill people for Satan, and on this single they do that very effectively. The most notable departure from the In the Streams of Inferno era of Mysticum on this release is the more varied utilization of textures. I mean, In the Streams of Inferno was already a pretty varied sort of album, but this song's got all sorts of weird shit going on with the vocals, and when the keyboards come in, it's even more outside the black metal norm than it was on their prior full length. The only thing I can think of from Norway that even compares to that level of bizarreness would be maybe the more black metal moments of Arcturus, or the really ultra elements going on in Tartaros. So a very cool little song, but unfortunately it is just that. It's just one song, and they seem to have kind of petered out after this release.
That boy is our last hope.
No. There is another.
Enter Manes, who put out an album 3 years after Mysticum's, continuing the Skynet-led satanic campaign. And yes, it is pronounced Manes, okay? It's a Latin word. It's an old Roman religious concept.
By order of the triumvirate, during his residence here, all mockery of Jews and their one God shall be kept to an appropriate minimum.
In its most simplistic definition, if you're a Roman guy and you die and you're a big old asshole, you come back as a lemure or lemure if you're going with the proper Latin pronunciation. You can come back as one of the lares if you were really good, and if you were kind of in the middle, you come back as one of the manes. It's also kind of funny that in Dungeons and Dragons cosmology, both the lemures and the manes were evil, with the lemures being the lawful evil lowest form of a devil, and the manes being the chaotic evil lowest form of a demon. You'd think they'd make the more objectively evil character of the lemures from Latin be the chaotic evil one, but what the fuck do I know?
아니 촬영 같은 거 하다 보면은
Right, sorry, I got a little swept up in the moment there. But their name is actually sort of a dual linguistic pun, in that Mane also means moon in Norwegian, as in the title of their first album, Under ein blodrød måne, or Under a Blood Red Moon. That sort of occultic feeling and esotericism, that kind of complexity, very much represents what this band sounds like. So in that way, I think it's a pretty clever name for the band. These guys are just about as overwhelmingly evil as Mysticum was, but in a different kind of way. They can blast like Mysticum when they have to, but it's not quite as aggressive and in your face as it was with that band. No, they have a different way of inculcating that sense of evil that's just as effective, but we'll get to that when it happens. You've probably already noticed that the keyboards are way more prominent in this band than they were with Mysticum, to the point where you might consider them a symphonic black metal band. But here's where the evil really comes in. These guys are a much more insidious sort of band with their malevolence. Just as evil as Mysticum, but a little bit more devil whispering in your ear as opposed to smiting you in the face. If you look at liner notes on this album, as well as interviews the band gave during the time that this album came out, they were pretty much just existing for themselves. They specifically said, we expect everyone in Norway to hate this album, but we don't really give a shit. This is our own truly evil form of black metal. And I think they absolutely succeeded with this album. Now, just based on that song alone, you might argue that these guys aren't really that industrial. I mean, they use a drum machine, but so do a billion other fucking black metal bands. But as you move further into the album's depths, you start getting hit with more and more kind of self-consciously industrial sounding stuff. This comes to the forefront on one of the album's major highlights, Uten liv ligger landet øde. Like, shit, homie, is that industrial enough for your dumbass? And this fucking riff right here, absolute mastery of the industrial black metal form. Great follow-up to the Thorns style. And then they hit you with this evil polka shit.
I had a few hits a few years ago. That's why I, the polka, 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 polka. No?
It would be downright silly sounding if it wasn't so fucking spiteful. It comes across as mocking. And here's another thing this album really has going for it. Lead guitar overlays. Absolutely beautifully evil sounding. They'll become even more apparent later on in those songs, but for now we're heading back to the industrial realms with these big punchy synth hits on top of dissonant chords. And here's that lead guitar I promised. Blutaussnord's Procession of the Dead Clowns is always kind of held up as this exemplary demonstration of industrial black metal, but to my ears, it doesn't really do anything terribly new that this song from Manes was doing almost a decade earlier. Like, that lead guitar is just fucking wild. One of the standouts of late Norwegian black metal. And like Mysticum, these guys also indulge in something of a remix conceit. We've already heard them repurposing ideas from Thorns, but in the case of Manes, they aren't really messing around with Marduk all that much. Rather, yeah, that's right. We got some fucking Burzum shit going on here. And man, do they do it well. They do a great job of working these sort of Burzumisms into their overall evil stonic stew, both in terms of the drum programming being straight up Burzum drum beats, and those layered buzzing guitars 100% smelling of the stench of Vard. Best riff of the album right here, baby. It doesn't get better than this when it comes to the evil end of atmospheric black metal. And right here, not only is the riff Burzum-ic, but that drum beat, total Burzum. Then they bring back a bit of that savagery from earlier in the album with some very aggressive keyboard stingers, perhaps somewhat reminiscent of demo-era Enslaved, before heading right back into that Burzum sense of meditation. Just as evil as Mysticum, but more subtle about it. And speaking of subtle evil, this upcoming riff feels like somebody walking across my fucking grave, dude. It's a variation of a riff from earlier in the song, but it just feels profoundly wrong in the best way possible, as does the trademark EVIL Norwegian piano arpeggio in the song's Denouement. Mayonnaise was a really interesting band at this point in their career, but they ended up having sort of the same career arc as Fluidity, where their first album, the black metal one, is an absolute 10 out of 10 classic that nothing else really sounds like it. Then they went post-black metal and kind of lost me, so I guess that's the end of this episode.
Is that all you got, nigga?
Oh, no, nigga. That's just the tip of this iceberg.
You remember earlier on in this episode I talked about how Mysticum kind of petered out after 2003?
That's right, Major. You did.
I lied.
2014 comes around, boom, new Mysticum album, Planet Satan, which was something of a black metal cryptid for many years because the Mysticum guys would always mention that they were working on it. I've actually got liner notes in my Limbonic art box set where they talk about how they were sharing a studio with Mysticum back in the late 90s, and at that point they were already working on this Planet Satan album. Well, it took a real long fucking time, but eventually it did come out. And for me, this album is a black metal renaissance, roughly on the level of Beherit's Engram album. Maybe it wasn't as widely recognized as that masterpiece, but for me, it's just as important. And it 100% fulfills all the promises made on that Black Magic Mushrooms single from so long ago. This song right here is entitled LSD, which stands for Lucifer in the Sky with Demons. So these guys are still big on the hippie bashing and the remixing. And as you could probably tell, this album has even more textural variance to it than the Black Magic Mushrooms single did. But more importantly than that, the riff craft is of equal quality to their older stuff. Definitely not your typical we're back sort of reunion album, okay? This shit is fucking serious. If those hateful fucking vocals didn't pull you in. And as mentioned earlier, this album is all about variance and texture. Like right here where they drop that drum machine out to just give you the guitars and then bring in some more electronic noise layers. The song feels like a living, breathing organism going through something of a life cycle. The drums come back in, but instead of the blast, we got the Burzum beat. The blast comes back for the chorus, which Mysticum didn't really have those before, but this song's got one. That approach only really happens on this song, though. This ain't some Vakken for shit. I think they just really wanted to yell the name of the song to mock the hippies. This album is much more wholehearted in its embrace of the electronic side of Mysticum's sound, as you can tell with this little interlude right here, before the black metal reemerges for the song's outro. And man, is that a wicked fucking scream. It's not quite to the level of those Ishan and the Nightside Eclipse style vocals they had on that first album, but it's definitely more than serviceable when it comes to putting across the sense of evil that these guys are looking for. Speaking of embracing the electronic side of their sound, we got full-on Dutch happy hardcore gabber fucking breaks. I mean, you hearing that fucking snare drum and the way the guitars kind of emanate outwards from it, fucking demonic. When it comes to black metal reunions that not only match the quality of the older material, but actually advance creative threads in their older music, the only thing that comes close to this album is the Beherit reunion. And anybody that knows me knows how strongly I feel about Beherit's Engram album. So that's high fucking praise. Also, are those fucking stringed riffs or some shit? Man, that's fucking dark. Jesus Christ. When it comes to black metal in 2014, I can't think of much that matched this album in terms of absolutely grasping the essence of what makes a proper Norwegian black metal classic. Like, I feel like even if you hate industrial music, if you're into black metal, you should absolutely go and familiarize yourself with this release. Hopefully Mysticum's got more stuff in store at this quality level, and hopefully it doesn't take another 20 years for it to come out. So there you go, industrial black metal. Sounds like it might be lame as shit, but when you do it properly, it actually kicks ass.
If you do the thing, and you do it right, and you don't fuck it up, it works. It just works.
Thanks for listening or watching or whatever you did. Remember to do all that like and subscribe shit. Share it with your friends if you think they might be into it. If not, get new friends because you're hanging out with posers. And I'll see you next time.
Oh, I just love living dangerously, don't I? Oh my God.